content creator for Dixie Belle, and I hope you've had a wonderful day. I'm doing something fun, and that is hanging out with you tonight. I'm going to be painting tonight, and as you pop in, let us know where you're watching from. That way we can kind of know where you are. Maybe let us know you're watching on replay. Tonight we're going to be blending. I have a couple of vintage nightstands behind me, and I've got a garage full of inventory. So I'm going to be doing, in the near future, I'll be doing several dressers and buffets, and some of them vintage, and most of them probably vintage, I guess. But this is no different tonight. It's already got a base coat of vintage duck egg. I did clean it with white lighting. I painted it with gray boss, and then I put one coat of vintage duck egg on there, and that's where I left it a couple days ago. And tonight we're going to be using Antebellum Blue and Sea Glass. Those are the three colors. I debated between Antebellum Blue and Stormy Seas, but I didn't want to get too dark and gray with Stormy Seas, so I'm hoping the Antebellum Blue saves the day. But everything I'm doing tonight, for the most part, is going to be blending. I'm not going to do any drippy, wet, distressing, things like that. So we'll keep it classy. I think this piece will look really great that way, and I think that will hopefully help. So if you haven't seen blending done in a while, you're in the right place. If you've seen me blend before, you're in the right place. Let's get into this live tonight, and I want to make sure that I cover all the great tips and how I like to blend. It is not the only way. It's just the way that I usually do it. And I feel like oftentimes when I'm doing my blending, it does take on a little bit of customization to that piece. What I mean by that is sometimes I'll blend and it's got a very tall length. Well, this is shorter, so I can do a little different. Notice how the panels here, I have two raised panels where this one doesn't have it. I've got these kind of, I don't know what to call it, molding or decorative rounded edges. So there's all kinds of variables you have to take in. You might find sometimes that your drawers set in, well, these overlap, so that I've got to paint around that. So there's lots of obstacles that you're going to encounter. I haven't exactly figured out. Sometimes it's just nice to just jump into it. I've not painted any of these with blending, so tonight you get to see me figure out some of those challenges as we get into it. Okay, so let's start on the easy side. To me, nice simple panel, and let's kind of establish the look we're going for. I think what I'd like to do is Antebellum will live around here, Sea Glass would be about right here, and everything else would be vintage duck egg. And again, Dixie Belle's not here tonight, so it's just you and I hanging out. So if you have questions, leave them in the comments, and I will come back and catch those here a little bit later on. I've got several brushes out. I think I'm going to focus on these are the flat mediums. See if the camera will grab it there. I practiced this earlier because sometimes it just doesn't want to do it. There we go, flat medium. I like this brush a lot. One, because it fits really nicely into 8-ounce jars. This is about as big as you can get. You can get a mini in there, but you can see a mini starts getting a little hazardous unless you're going to pour it out in another container. That's one reason why I like the flat medium. So I also have Dixie Belle's Mister bottle, and I also have a damp cloth. Okay, this means I got it wet and wrung out all the extra water, and that's going to be what I'll use. If y'all remember, maybe I think this was on one of my lives Friday nights on my Dixie Belle, my Bowtie Treasures Facebook page. We called this Old Faithful. I can't remember who helped me with that name, but anyways, Old Faithful just means that I try to hang on. This is a newer version of the oval small, and this is an older one, so you can see it kind of starting to flare out. You can also blend tonight. You can blend with mini if you want. You could blend with Dixie Belle's Best Dang brush, but it's a little large and flat, and I need something a little versatile around all these curves. So I'm going to go with an oval small for my blending brush. So I'll do my best to try and describe which brush I'm using as we're moving along. What I like to do, there's two ways to blend. You can blend two wet colors together in the middle, or you can paint a wet color and blend over it. I'm going to go with the paint vintage duck egg, and we'll put color over that. That's kind of my goal. So as I get into this, make sure I get the right brush. I want to establish, this will be the second coat of vintage duck egg. Remember, I've only done one coat so far, and I'm only going to work one side or section at a time. So right now I'm just putting the second coat on there. And as I have blended before on lives with you, I've expressed the fact that you need to be, see if I can remember my tips. 1, work quickly. 2, keep it wet. And 3, have a light hand. So that's our goal. So what I'm doing right now, I'm establishing where I'm going to be blending the Antebellum Blue in. There's no reason for me to paint the entire side because I only need to blend where the Antebellum Blue is going. For the smaller sections of color, I'm going to be using a 1-inch brush. This is Dixie Belle's 1-inch, or I call them 1-inch. They're the flat small. This is just enough for me to use to apply color. So let's do this. Remember, I just put vintage duck egg on there. Having vintage duck egg on there will allow me to blend those two colors together and not have it. So I'm not going with pure vintage duck egg. I'm just using vintage duck egg to darken. So I'm kind of blending already. And all I have to do at this point is determine how far up I want to go. So I'm just mixing in those colors. Sometimes you can do little infinity symbols like little tiny X's. And I think that's going to be as far as I go with Antebellum Blue. Now this is where I'm going to use my Old Faithful. And here's where I'm going to blend. This is where the light hand comes in. Work quickly, work wet, work with a light hand. You do that, you will have blending success, at least in my opinion. Okay, you see how I'm going over what I've already, this is softening. It's removing any brush strokes. You see how I'm kind of going side to side, up and down, hiding those brush strokes. I'm not too worried about the side. I'll come around and that'll start drying and I can work on that later. Now here's a little bit of a tip problem, or keep an eye on if you're going to mist. In fact, let's not mist. I'm just going to keep going with vintage duck egg. I have about 2 inches of area that I did not paint or blend into, so I can come right back and pick up. You see how I'm crisscrossing? That just allows me to put the paint down in a nice blended soft. I'm loving this Antebellum Blue. I am not sure that I have blended. I need to put a little bit of water. I'm going to put water on my brush and not on the paint because I don't want the water droplets to get on my blending. If it does, just let it dry. Don't mess that up. Guess what we're doing now? We're getting ready to bring in sea glass. Hopefully the light's picking all this process up. Like I said before, I've not tried this technique on this piece. You're seeing it for the first time, so it's enjoyable to, a little stressful on me, right? If it fails, you get to see it. All right, now we're going to put that brush down. I'm going to get another 1-inch brush because I don't want a big brush, just to apply a little bit. This is sea glass, and we're going to put the sea glass up at the top. I'm not going to go up into the molding area. I don't think I need to. This is just to add a little bit of depth. It's a little hard to remember exactly how much color I'm putting in my brush. But that works. Okay, now here's what I think I'm going to do. I'm going to leave this blending brush for the darker colors. Let's go ahead and just use another oval small for top light color. So again, soft hand. It's a little sticky. Probably could use a little bit of misting, but I think it's gonna be okay. Don't wait too long. Hopefully you can recite them with me, the 3 steps. Work quickly, keep it wet, and use a light hand. Now, I will tell you, right here, it's looking funny. Once you get this, when you feel like you have it done, you need to stop and let it dry because it'll play some mind tricks on you. You might have a little bit of an issue right here. I think I may have gone just a little bit too low. Just light it and let that dry and then see where you are. but I think that's going to look really lovely. Just a nice subtle blend to kind of take the eye down and give this a nice lovely foundation. So while you're doing that, it would be better for me at this point not to keep moving on this side because I don't want to get into that right now. Let's practice. When I say practice, I mean let's repeat this entire process. While you're in the rhythm and groove of doing it, you might as well go ahead and do the other side. So that's what we're going to do. So let's repeat the steps. First, we're going to let's put a little water on my brush. The challenge is going to be the other side. What I mean is the front is going to be the hardest because there's the two drawers and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully I'm explaining it easy enough that if you haven't blended, you can say, oh, no problem, I got this. If not, I do recommend that you just practice a little bit on a panel, on a small piece. I will tell you, and I've got my little lazy Susan going here, I need to kind of have a reference point. So we're going to say that the hardware is about where that blend should happen. Okay, so have a nice reference point because you don't, that way you know how high to go with it. All right. Using the flat medium right now. We'll go a little bit higher, and that's enough. Let's give it a quick mist that helps it stay wet. Now we're going to go to Antebellum. Antebellum. This, remember, we're kind of mixing it into the vintage duck egg. I had mentioned there's a couple ways to do this. One, I could not put vintage duck egg first, and I could just do Antebellum Blue. But remember, Antebellum Blue would be the pure color. And I don't want to go pure Antebellum Blue. I just want to be a darkened vintage duck egg. So I'm using this to darken. All right, and that's as far as I want to go. So right now, I'm just kind of mixing it in. Swish, 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 swish. That's an official technique, swish, 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 swish. So if you feel that's, but the one thing I will say that I'm putting a decent amount of paint in. If I had a fourth criteria is make sure you're using plenty of paint when you blend. Because if you're not, it's going to dry too fast. Okay, so let's do a quick softening. We're going to start at the bottom. We're just repeating what we just did, but here, this brush is allowing us to soften and mix a little bit more refined. Hopefully you can see the wrist action I have a little bit. Again, I call it almost like an infinity symbol. Crisscross X's if you want. You're just looking to hide those brush strokes. And then look for anything else that needs to be softened up. And then step away. I probably did not leave myself enough of the vintage duck egg, but remember, you don't want to, if it wouldn't do me any good to paint all this vintage duck egg and then try and blend because that paint would start to dry. So now I'm picking up where I left off. Just trying not to interrupt where I was before. Please not to. You can see how soft that is. I'm not doing any tricks here. You can do this. If you struggled with blending, first, do something that is flat and easy. Don't try and take on more than you have tried. In other words, don't do complex shapes and panels, and just some nice, simple. The second thing I would say, if you've never blended before, is take account of how many brushes I'm using. I would say at minimum, you should have 3. You should have a brush for color 1, a brush for color 2, and then another color for your blending. That's my advice. I'm using more than 3 brushes, and that's because I'm using more than 2 colors. If all I did was blend once, but I'm blending twice, Hopefully that makes sense. If all I was doing was this blend, I wouldn't need more than 3 brushes, but I need at least 4 for what I'm doing. Okay, let's bring in the sea glass. Try and remember how much paint I put down on the other side. But keep in mind, if it's not perfect, it's kind of impossible to match them up. Now, I am quite aware that some people would probably, most of the time if you're doing nightstands, most people can't see both sides. They'll probably see at least one side. I know in my master bedroom, one of the nightstands, you probably would not see the blending. But another one you would totally see as you walk in the room every time. That sea glass is subtle, but when it dries, it's going to just give it a little bit of a highlight. Is it required to the success of this? No, but I think it's just a nice element to add some depth. So this is almost optional. And if it's not enough for what you're doing, then I would go to something even lighter. Might even consider something like fluff if you really want it to be nice and bright. Okay, so again, if you start feeling like the paint's not looking right, it could be that it's going through different stages of drying, like this right here or right there. You have to let it dry. We'll go back to the other side. It might even, you see how it's starting really hard? That won't be there when it's all dry. So you don't freak out. You're gonna have to have a little bit of faith in doing this. Okay, let's talk about these panels. I think it would be nice to blend on these panels, so let's do that. 2 different drawers. Couldn't they keep it simple for us? No. Now keep in mind, our blend is happening pretty much at this hardware area. So I need to determine, do I even want to blend here? I think I'm going to leave the blending to stop here, and let's do something different on the panels. There's no reason for me to cut through the drawer. You could, but I don't think this piece needs that. I will come across the bottom with the Antebellum. So let's focus on just this panel. And maybe when I'm done, I'll pull it out. I'm just going to give it a quick mist. And I think what I'd like to do is we will go with vintage duck egg. Just hang on for the ride. How about that? Let's just make this up as we go. First thing I'm going to do is go ahead and give this its second coat of vintage duck egg. Goal 1, get vintage all the way on there. And we're going to create a nice glow. I think that'll set this hardware off really well. Back to my sea glass brush, get a little bit of paint, and let's just put a nice glow in there. So for this brush, I'm going to just do a little bit of a mixing onto the wet vintage duck egg, and we'll stop there. We will get our brush that we used a while ago for blending those 2 light colors. Let me bring in, if you need to, give it a quick spritz. If you can't move this quickly, see how it's just fading away? Now this is the light hand. Remember, keep it wet, work quickly, keep a light hand. This is a light hand, like 5% pressure, barely touching the paint. And that's going to give you your soft. If you have a heavy hand, that's going to be tough to do. Look at that glow. This is where you go, oh. And adjust as you need to. Like if it's a little high or low, sometimes I will come back and put a touch more of color if I don't get my balance right, but that's going to work really well. Let me show you something real quick. This is a little off topic, but I just finished this. Do you see this highlight around the hardware? That was done by me putting paint on here and blending into it while the other coats were dry. So sometimes, and I'll call that shading. So that little glow is what I'm going for. But in this case today, we're doing it wet. Where here, I just put paint on a dry surface and just feathered it out. Okay, can you see that glow? Hopefully it comes through. So when you see this project that I'm going to probably post here in the next couple days, just know that I didn't actually blend it. I call that shading. That's a little different process. Okay. All right, that's looking great. I think that came out really well. Now, what I can do later on, and I've demonstrated shading before, I can come in here with a little bit of the Antebellum Blue and just shade that inside panel if I wanted to. Let's move up to the top one. I think the top one, we will do a little bit of the same way, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop the highlight on this panel and not in here. I think that would look cool. If not, after it dries, I'll think it over and repaint it. So let's do a quick second coat of vintage duck egg. Okay, second coat of vintage duck egg. Let's put just a quick spray and let's see what it would look like if we just hit this surface with sea glass. And I'm not really so much blending as much as I am painting, but I do want it to, I'm just trying to be careful not to get sea glass all over the panel. Sea glass blending brush here, and we're just going to soften those brush strokes, just really light hand. Really almost mixing more than I am blending. And we're just gonna, I'll let this dry tonight and tomorrow. I'll look at it and see if for sure that was definitely the way to go. I'm just touching up some areas that I got sea glass on that I don't want. But I think that's kind of different to let those panels pop and we'll recede. The hardware is kind of will kind of be set off. I could come in there and make this antebellum, but again, I don't want it to be too dark. I think the sides being antebellum are the key on that. So in order to continue, I'm going to take the drawers out because I don't want to get anything on the drawers. We're doing great on time. I would do both nightstands, but it's a little easier to work one at a time, and especially for this live. Let's continue across the bottom. Elizabeth, that's a great question. Elizabeth said, I seem to use more paint than others. The reason why I use more paint, and that's the secret to my success, is because, or the way I like to blend, is that you can't really blend without enough color. What happens is if you don't use enough color, it dries and gets sticky too fast. But I'm mixing the two colors together, and the more paint you use, the smoother and faster and easier it is to paint. So I do, you were totally right, and hopefully I made that clear early on, or as I go, that more paint makes it easier to blend. Because if you don't have any paint there, you can't possibly blend something that isn't there. Hopefully that answers your question really well. So, like I said early on, this coat applying of the second coat of vintage duck egg, I could have already had this painted vintage duck egg, but I want this color to mix with the Antebellum Blue, so I don't have Antebellum Blue be so intense. And the only reason I'm holding the brush funny is because I'm trying to get underneath this little section. So I do have to get over to the other side a little bit. This is going to be the tricky part. Not messing up the other side. Is there really any great answer to that? No, I wish maybe you have a better idea, but. Okay, so we need to move quickly. I'm going to go up the side a little bit. You can't blend. You can only do so much at a time before the paint starts to dry on you. So that's why you can only do so many sections at a time. So vintage duck egg is down. This is about where I need to start blending up. I'm working quickly because that's one of the top 3 things I have to remember when blending. Just put enough paint down You know what? I tell you what, let's try something different. We're gonna make something up on the fly. How about if we take a little tip from the drawer? What if we left the middle without paint and we kind of make a highlight? That would be cool. Okay, where's my brush? There it is. So let's do that. I'm a little off center, but I think we can make that work. Let's bring this over a little bit. I was trying to create this highlight in the middle. Let's put a little bit more vintage duck egg in the middle. I want a symmetrical blend. There we go, something like that. So all we're doing now is softening. You may have to get your rag out to work on the side. Sorry if I'm blocking things a little bit there, because I may not be 100% perfect here. I'm willing to take that chance. But that's the tricky part of this. So about right here, I want to start blending and not have any Antebellum Blue in the middle. Got some fuzz in my brush there. Okay, so about right there. It's going to have this nice little glow there. I think that's cool. We'll find out when it's dry, all right? Sometimes it's one of those things where you just got to let everything dry. You got to put the drawers back in. You kind of have to feel that out, seeing that that's a good look. I'm having to work on the side a little bit. All right. I am painting on the inside of where the drawers go, just to complete it. Sorry, I need to keep this going up the side. This is just vintage duck egg right here. I want to keep that, I want to transition that nicely. If you have to look at the side, see I kind of, might not be picking up on camera, but goopered it a little bit. Just maybe wipe that off. It should be dry enough, a light touch, just so I don't have to rework that side too much. And just fade that. The goal is just to fade it out. This is why, if you haven't picked onto it, this is kind of why I've called it intermediate. There's a lot of moving parts, but I really would encourage you, if you haven't blended, stick to two colors. Focus on how I did just the bottom and see if that works for you. I did a live not long ago, and if you haven't checked out my YouTube channel, there's a lot of great videos in there. And I blended on a vertical vintage dresser. That has some fun techniques, some complicated blending. But I have a lot of videos. If you search for Aaron on Dixie Belle's Facebook page, you'll see a lot of fun videos. Let's bring in that sea glass up here at the top. And we'll just fade out to the middle. And we'll get our blending brush for those two light colors. I'm probably working a little faster than you really would have to, but I do want to emphasize the fact that fast is better than blending. So remember, this sea glass is going to be subtle, but I think when it dries, it's just going to be a little hint of lightness, and I like how the eye will be drawn up to the top. I don't know what I'm going to do so much, if I'm going to do too much blending up here. I think there's enough going on with the hardware that this is just a complementary aspect to the project. I didn't do anything here but vintage duck egg. By the time the drawers are there, you're not going to see a lot of that. So my goal at this point will be to replicate this on the other nightstand. Looks like I missed a couple spots there. So stay tuned. I will definitely finish these up here in the next few days. Take some staged pictures with them, and the fun thing is you're able to see me complete that. If you haven't done so already after this live, go check out my website, bowtietreasure.com. Listen to my podcast, let me know what you think. Use the link in the comments to get some of that great paint. Hopefully you got some Christmas money. You can go get some goodies from Dixie Belle, and let me know what you do with it. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Aaron with Bowtie Treasures here in the Bowtie Treasure studio. I'm a content creator for Dixie Belle. Thanks for joining us. You guys do something awesome. Be creative. Take care. We'll see you next time.
That's the end of the show. Make sure you subscribe and ring the bell before you go. Bye.